Close your eyes. Let the noise of the modern world fade. The hum of engines, the glow of screens, the constant chatter. Imagine instead a world before warmth was easy, a world where night fell harder, colder, and longer. Now, you stand somewhere in the far north, not the Canada you know, not the land of coffee shops and highways. This is the year 1300. There are no cities, no streetlights, no comfort. Only a boundless wilderness of ice and trees. A silence so deep it hums in your ears. The first breath you take burns. Cold air cuts your throat like glass. You exhale, and a cloud of white mist swirls before your face, vanishing almost as soon as it appears. You are alone, though not completely. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a raven caws once, then goes silent again. Snowflakes drift slowly from a gray sky, soft and endless, each one landing without a sound. It's beautiful and deadly. You begin to walk. The snow reaches up to your knees, heavy, slowing you with every step. Your boots, thick leather wrapped with fur, creak under the strain. The sound is swallowed by the forest. Every noise, every breath feels too loud. There is no path, no road to follow, just trees, dark, tall, frozen, stretching forever in every direction. Their branches droop under the weight of snow, bending toward you like tired hands. Even in daylight, the world is dim. The people who lived here before, the ancestors of the First Nations, knew how to survive. They read the wind. They knew when the ice was too thin to cross, when the sky warned of storms. But you are just a visitor, a traveler from a warm world of comfort. Already, the cold has begun to creep through your clothes. Your fingers tingle, then ache. Soon they'll go numb. You pull your cloak tighter, but the wind finds its way in anyway. It always does. Hours pass. You find what might be shelter, a small clearing where a few logs form a crude lean-to. It isn't much. Inside, it smells of smoke and animal fat. Someone once camped here. Maybe weeks ago, maybe years. You light what little fire you can. The flame is small, flickering, fragile against the cold. Outside, the snow keeps falling. The world grows quieter still. There are no human voices, no bells, no wheels, no songs. Just the steady whisper of winter. As you sit by your fire, you begin to feel something strange, a kind of stillness that isn't peaceful. It's ancient, watching. The way the forest seems to breathe around you, slow, deep, and endless. You remember that you are not the first to sit in this silence. Long before you, others survived here. Some did not. You think of what a day in this land would mean, how every hour is a test. To find food before darkness falls, to keep your fire alive through the wind, to avoid the thin ice that cracks beneath your boots, to listen, always, for the sound of something moving in the dark. The forest changes when the sun sets. Shadows lengthen,
twisting between the trees. The air turns sharper, harder. Even your breath sounds too loud. You hear something then, soft footsteps, maybe an animal, a fox or a wolf. You don't know. You hope it's small. But even the smallest creatures here are hungrier than you've ever been. And the cold makes everything desperate.
Your fire crackles once, spitting sparks into the snow. The light flickers against the trees. For a moment, you think you see shapes. People, maybe, standing just beyond the glow. Then they vanish again into the dark. You tell yourself it's only your eyes adjusting, only the cold playing tricks. But the forest doesn't care what you believe. It just watches and waits. Somewhere above, the aurora begins to shimmer. Green, blue, and faint red streaks curling across the night sky. It's beautiful enough to make you forget the cold. Almost. For a moment, you understand why the people of this land told stories about spirits in the lights. Ancient ones who danced across the heavens to guide or warn those below. But you are not one of them. You are an intruder, fragile and soft, dropped into a world that demands strength and patience. Here, nature is not cruel. It is indifferent. And that is somehow worse.
The fire begins to fade. You lean closer, shielding it from the wind with your hands. Your gloves are stiff with frost. The wood is wet. Soon, the last ember will die, and you'll be left in darkness so complete it feels alive. You curl up under your cloak. The snow continues to fall. Your eyes grow heavy. The cold doesn't feel like pain anymore. It feels like sleep. That's how it begins. You wouldn't last a day here. Not because you're weak, but because no one from your world is meant to survive in this one. The forest exhales. The wind hums softly through the trees, and the last thing you hear is the slow, steady heartbeat of the land itself. The struggle for fire and food. Morning doesn't come all at once. It slides into the world quietly, a pale gray light filtering through branches, the snow reflecting every shade of blue. You wake slowly, unsure if you've slept or merely drifted in and out of the cold. Your body aches. Your fingers don't want to move. When you lift your hand, frost cracks on your sleeve. You survived the night, barely. The fire has died, leaving behind only a thin line of smoke curling upward. The air bites harder now that the small warmth is gone. You know you need to move, find more wood, more food, more life before the sun fades again. Here, time doesn't feel like hours. It feels like chances slipping away. You stand and stretch, bones stiff, breath visible in thick clouds. The forest around you is still. No sound of birds, no sign of animals, just silence so complete it hums in your ears. You remember what the people of this land once knew, how to read tracks in the snow, how to tell the difference between the wind and something alive. You, though, can only guess, and guessing is dangerous. You walk, slow and heavy, through knee-deep snow. Each step drains more of your strength. The trees seem to lean closer the farther you go. their branches closing overhead like fingers. The cold is not just around you, it is inside you now, whispering softly to stop moving. You find a small stream, frozen solid. Underneath, dark water still flows, quiet and distant. You kneel and break the ice with a rock. The sound echoes sharply, unnatural, almost too loud for this quiet world. You scoop a handful of water, and it burns your lips with cold, sharper than fire. But it's clean, pure, the first thing that doesn't hurt to take from this land. You think about food. There's nothing in sight. No berries, no roots. Even the bark looks stripped, as if others have taken what they could before you. You see a trail, faint prints in the snow. Maybe a rabbit, maybe something else. You follow. Every few steps you lose them, find them again. The snow hides everything it doesn't want you to see. An hour passes, then another. Your stomach growls quietly, then painfully. You begin to understand how hunger changes sound, the way your heartbeat starts to echo in your head, the way the world tilts slightly, and every shadow starts to look like movement.
You stop under a cluster of pines, shaking snow from your hood. A crow watches from a branch above, black against white, feathers puffed against the cold. It stares at you without fear. Its eyes seem almost human, calm, distant, knowing something you don't. When it finally calls out, the sound is so sharp, it cuts the silence in two. You whisper to yourself, maybe to the bird, maybe to the forest, just one more step. That's what the survivors always said, didn't they? One more step. You find a clearing, sunlight faintly touching the snow. There, beneath a fallen tree, is what might be luck, a rabbit's track leading into a small hole. You don't have traps, no bow, no spear, only hands stiff from the cold. But you dig anyway, slow, clumsy, desperate. The snow is packed hard, the earth beneath frozen solid. After a few minutes, you stop. The rabbit is long gone. Only the cold remains. The wind rises again, gentle but relentless. It moves through the trees like a voice. Sometimes it sounds like words, sometimes like laughter. Maybe it's the forest talking, or maybe it's just your mind beginning to wander in the cold.
You keep walking. Hours pass. You lose the sense of direction. The sun moves somewhere behind the clouds, low and pale. There is no north or south anymore, just forward. You stumble once, fall to your knees and stay there for a long moment. Your breath is ragged, your arms feel heavy, like they belong to someone else. The snow beneath your palms glows faintly in the light, so white it almost hurts to look at. And then, in that quiet, you hear it. Water again. A river, not frozen completely. You follow the sound, dragging your feet. At the edge, where ice meets flowing water, you see fish moving beneath the surface, slow silver shapes gliding through the dark. You smile without realizing. Food. You try to catch one, plunging your hands into the freezing water. Pain explodes through your fingers, sharp, instant, electric. You pull back, shaking, gasping. You try again. The second time you almost catch one, but it slips away. The third time, you lose feeling altogether. The fourth, you stop. You stare at your hands, red, raw, trembling. The cold is inside your bones now. You sit back, watching the river flow like time, steady, uncaring. You think of the people who lived here once, how they built nets from sinew, how they trapped fish with stone weirs, how they understood this land's rhythm. You realize then, you don't belong here. Not in this century, not in this kind of silence. The snow begins again, slow and soft. You know you need fire. Without it, there won't be another morning. You find a fallen branch, split it with your knife, and try to spark a flame. Your hands shake too much. The wind steals the heat before it can grow. You try again and again, until finally a single flame catches, small and defiant. You shield it, whispering to it like it's alive, because it is. Here, fire is life. Without it, nothing lasts.
When it grows into a weak glow, you crouch beside it, holding your hands over the heat. The warmth creeps back slowly. Not enough to comfort, but enough to remind you that you're still here, still fighting. Above you, snow drifts down through the branches. The sky turns to a dull silver gray. Night will come again soon. You'll need shelter before then. You sit, listening to the hiss of the wind, the crackle of your fire, the heartbeat in your ears. For a moment, the land feels almost kind, like it's letting you rest. But it's not mercy. It's only waiting. You close your eyes. The forest breathes. And somewhere beyond the trees, something moves. The long night returns. The light fades again before you expect it. Here, the sun never lingers. It rises weakly, circles the sky like a dying ember, and sinks before you have truly warmed. By late afternoon, the shadows of the trees are already long and thin. The air thickens. You can feel the cold tightening around you, drawing close like a slow tide.
You search for shelter. The snow has deepened, heavy now, burying everything except the tallest shrubs and trunks. Each step makes a dull thud, then silence. Your breath comes in white bursts. You keep thinking of warmth, a fire, a cabin, a hearth. Things that do not exist here. There is only the forest. You find a small rise in the land, a hollow beneath two leaning spruces. It isn't much, but it will hold back some wind. You scrape snow aside with your hands, piling it in a rough wall, shaping a shallow den. It is clumsy, but it is shelter. You crawl inside, knees drawn tight, and light what remains of your fire bundle. The flame catches slowly, flickering against the trunk. The first heat touches your face. It feels like a memory more than a sensation. You feed it twigs, small sticks, bits of bark. The wood smokes, stings your eyes, but burns. Soon a faint orange glow fills the hollow. For the first time that day, you let your mind wander. You think of home, wherever that may be in your imagination. Walls that do not move, glass that keeps out the cold,
food that comes without fear, a world where night is gentle.
Here, night is a weight. It presses on everything. When darkness settles, it is total. The stars appear, sharp and near, as if the sky itself has lowered to listen. The snow reflects their light in a dim shimmer, 1,000 quiet sparks scattered across the ground. You try to rest, but the body does not relax easily in such cold. Muscles shiver to keep life moving through them. Your breath sounds too loud in the still air. Every few moments, you open your eyes, thinking you've heard something outside the hollow, a crunch, a step, a sigh of wind. Nothing moves, but the feeling remains. The people who once lived in these lands spoke of spirits that guarded the forest. They said the land itself was alive. Each rock and tree had memory. When someone entered without respect, the forest watched. It did not attack, but it waited, letting the cold and silence do the work. You remember those stories now. You try to whisper something that might count as respect. Maybe the forest hears you, maybe it doesn't.
Hours pass. The fire sinks to coals. You feed it slowly, careful not to waste what little wood you have. Outside, the wind rises and falls like slow breathing. Snow sifts through cracks above you, gathering near your boots. Your hands shake from exhaustion, not fear. The line between the two has blurred. You look toward the opening of your shelter. Beyond it lies the faint outline of trees, their trunks pale and ghost-like in starlight. For a moment, they seem to move. Then you blink, and they are still again. You realize you are listening for voices, any sound that might mean another person. But there are none. In this land, companionship is a luxury rarer than food. Loneliness is part of the weather. It wraps around you like the snow, gentle but relentless. You think of what morning will demand. You will have to find new wood, new food, perhaps even a safer place to rest. Every task will take strength you may not have. Still, you tell yourself you will try. That small promise feels heavy enough to carry through the night.
You don't think of comfort anymore, only of endurance, and of how the forest never truly sleeps. The long night is over, but another waits not far behind. The frozen frontier. The light spreads slowly across the forest, revealing more of the same endless white. It isn't beautiful anymore. It's heavy, blank, without edges. The cold dulls everything, even thought. You stop thinking in words. You move, breathe, listen, and that's all. The forest is ancient. The trees rise like pillars of a forgotten cathedral. Every trunk is wrapped in frost, and each branch glitters faintly in the pale sun. Here and there, you see the marks of old fires, black scars in the wood where lightning struck long before you were born. Everything endures here, but nothing changes.
You begin to walk toward a ridge. The ground climbs slowly, and the snow grows thinner where the wind scours it away. Your steps leave clear prints, long lines through the drift. When you reach the crest, the world opens in every direction. Below lies a frozen river twisting through the valley, white and silver under the dim light. Beyond it, a dark sweep of forest, and the faint outline of distant hills. The air tastes metallic, sharp, alive. You stand still for a moment, trying to imagine what this land was before anyone gave it a name, before maps, before boundaries, before anyone tried to measure it. Only the slow breath of winter, the sound of ice breaking somewhere far away. It makes you feel very small and very temporary. You start the descent toward the river. The slope is slick, the snow crusted with ice. You slide part of the way, catching yourself on branches, heart pounding at the sudden motion. At the bottom, the world is even colder. The river lies trapped under a thick sheet of ice, its surface rippled and opaque. Here and there, cracks run through it, filled with pale blue light. You kneel, press your hand against the surface. The ice hums faintly, a deep sound you can feel in your bones. Underneath, water still moves, slower than thought, older than time. You listen until you realize you've been holding your breath. The sound is steady, patient, endless.
You follow the river upstream. The banks are lined with willows, their thin branches drooping low, frozen into strange shapes by layers of frost. Once in a while, a gust of wind lifts fine powder from the surface, turning the air into a white shimmer. The snow stings your face, but you keep walking. Moving is the only way to stay warm. Midday arrives, though it hardly looks different. The sun is a pale disk, barely higher than the treetops. Its light feels distant, not enough to melt, only enough to remind you it exists. You stop to eat a handful of snow, just enough to wet your throat. The taste is clean and empty. A set of tracks cross your path, larger than a rabbit's, smaller than a wolf's. You crouch and study them, but the snow blurs their edges. You follow them a short way until they disappear into brush. Nothing moves there, only silence. You think again of the people who once lived here, how they traveled on snowshoes woven from sinew and branch, how they carried flint and dried meat, how every movement had meaning. You have none of those things. You have only will, and that is wearing thin.
By late afternoon, clouds roll in from the north. The wind rises, steady and cold, brushing fine snow across the ice. You tighten your cloak and look for a place to hide from the coming storm. The forest thickens again on the far side of the river. You cross carefully, each step testing the surface. The ice creaks but holds. When you reach the opposite bank, you breathe out in relief, though the air steals that warmth instantly. Among the trees, you find the remnants of an old campsite, a ring of stones half buried under snow. Someone once built a fire here, maybe years ago. You clear the circle, gather wood from fallen branches, and light a small flame. The smoke rises thin and gray, vanishing into the white air. You sit close, palms open to the heat. The feeling of warmth spreads slowly up your arms, and for a few minutes you almost believe you could live here. The storm reaches you soon after. Snow begins to fall thickly, heavy flakes drifting down without sound. The forest fades to silhouettes. The fire shrinks under the weight of cold air, but it stays alive. You watch the snow build around the stones, and the thought comes quietly. This land is not cruel. It simply doesn't notice you.
Evening returns with its pale light. You feed the fire one last branch and curl close to it. The sound of wind through the trees becomes steady, like the ocean far away. Your eyes grow heavy. You think of the river still moving beneath the ice, the pulse of something ancient that never stops. Sleep takes you before you realize you've drifted. Morning will come again, thin, gray, and cold. The fire will be gone, the snow deeper. But for now, there is a small warmth against your skin, and that is enough. The first signs of hunger. When you wake, the world has turned to gray silence. The fire has died, leaving only a hollow circle of blackened stones. The ashes are cold to the touch. You sit up slowly, the stiffness of the night still inside your bones. Every breath sends a faint cloud into the air, proof that you are still alive. The snow has deepened around you. Your tracks from yesterday are gone, erased by the storm. Everything looks smooth again, perfect, untouched, indifferent. It's as if you were never here.
You rise and begin to walk, your legs heavy, your stomach hollow. It has been a long time since you've eaten anything real. The body is patient at first, willing to believe food will appear, but patience fades faster than heat. The forest stretches in every direction, dense and quiet. Branches hang low with snow, bending under its weight. Now and then, the sound of ice cracking in the distance reminds you that something is always shifting, even in stillness. You listen for animals, a bird, a rabbit, anything. There is nothing, not even crows. You find a small stream cutting through the snow, its water still moving beneath a skin of ice. You kneel and drink, the cold biting your teeth. The water burns in your throat, but steadies your mind. You think about how early settlers survived on things that barely counted as food. Bark stripped from trees, broth made from roots, fish frozen solid and thawed by firelight. They didn't call it survival. They called it life. By midday, the light brightens slightly, turning the world silver. You walk along the stream, hoping it might lead to open water or a sign of life. But the land doesn't change. Only more trees, more snow, more silence. You begin to notice how the hunger dulls thought. It narrows the mind until all that exists is the next step, the next breath. The past feels far away, and the future doesn't seem possible. Just this, white, cold, breath, step. At last, you find something. Half buried in the snow is a shape, dark and rough. You brush the powder away and reveal wood, a piece of a broken sled. The bindings are torn and the runners cracked. Someone left it here long ago. Beside it lies the faint outline of a fire pit, stones blackened by time. You crouch there, tracing the marks with your glove. It feels strange to touch evidence of another life, someone who tried to do what you were doing now. You wonder if they made it out. You find a small scrap of fabric caught on a branch nearby. It's stiff with frost,
but the weave is fine, a color once blue, now faded to gray. You pocket it without thinking, a fragment of a world that once struggled the same way. You keep moving. The body demands it, even when the mind wants to rest. Every few steps, the snow sinks deeper, up to your knees, slowing you down. You start to hear the sound of your own breath, louder than anything else. A steady rhythm, a reminder that you are still here, still fighting the cold that wants you to stop.
As the light fades again, you reach a clearing. The trees open to a flat stretch of snow, broken only by old stumps and small drifts. At the far edge stands a cabin, small, leaning slightly, half buried in snow. The wood is gray with age, the roof sagging under the weight of winter, but it's real, a shelter. You approach slowly, half expecting it to vanish. The door hangs open, frozen at an angle. You push it with your shoulder, and it groans against the frame. Inside, the air smells of old wood and dust. The walls are lined with rough-hewn logs, and the floor is scattered with bits of bark, leaves, and what might once have been straw. You can see the outline of a hearth, a pile of stones in the corner. You close the door behind you. The silence deepens. For the first time in days, you feel almost safe. The wind can't reach you here. You sit in the corner, back against the cold wall. It's not warmth, but it's shelter, and that feels like mercy. You find an old wooden spoon on the floor, its handle worn smooth. Beside it, a cracked clay pot, still holding a faint smell of smoke. Someone lived here. Someone cooked, slept, waited. Maybe they waited for spring. Maybe they never saw it.
You gather what dry scraps you can, bits of bark, thin twigs from a gap in the wall, and manage to light a small flame. The fire burns unevenly, but gives off light that feels alive. You hold your hands near it, not to warm them, but to remember what warmth feels like. Outside, the snow falls again, soft and endless. Inside, your stomach aches quietly. You find a few kernels of grain in the corner, brittle but real. You chew them slowly, pretending it helps. The taste is faint, but it feels like hope. As the night deepens, the fire flickers low. You lie down on the cold floor, pulling your cloak close. The wind hums faintly outside. The old cabin creaks. You stare at the ceiling, tracing the patterns of frost that spread like veins across the wood. You think about how strange survival is. Not heroic, not grand, just quiet persistence. The people who once lived here didn't endure because they were stronger. They endured because they had no choice. They worked, waited, and kept breathing. You close your eyes, trying to do the same. Sleep comes slowly, but it comes. Outside, the snow keeps falling, covering the world again, making it new and blank by morning.
The long silence. Morning returns as a soft gray light through the cracks in the cabin wall. The snow outside is deeper than before, packed tight against the door. You push it open slowly and step into stillness. The sky is the color of ash, and the air carries no wind. The forest seems frozen in mid-breath. You listen for birds, but none call. Only the faint creak of trees expanding in the cold. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than noise, how it presses on your ears until you begin to imagine whispers that aren't there. You walk a short distance from the cabin, marking your path with a branch. Every step sinks deep. Your body aches, but motion feels necessary. To stop would mean surrender. The forest offers nothing new. No tracks, no movement. Even the river is hidden now under thick snow, its frozen surface invisible. You listen for birds, but none call. Only the faint creak of trees expanding in the cold. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than noise, how it presses on your ears until you begin to imagine whispers that aren't there. You walk a short distance from the cabin, marking your path with a branch. Every step sinks deep. Your body aches, but motion feels necessary. To stop would mean surrender. The forest offers nothing new. No tracks, no movement. Even the river is hidden now under thick snow, its frozen surface invisible beneath a soft white cover. The world feels endless and empty, a quiet space where time forgets to move.
You turn back toward the cabin before your footprints vanish. The smoke from your small fire curls lazily into the air. That thin gray line looks fragile, a sign of life barely strong enough to matter, but it's yours. You spend the day inside, conserving what little strength remains. You listen to the wood creak, to the faint crack of ice somewhere outside. You begin to notice how the light changes with every passing hour, pale in the morning, almost blue at noon, and golden for a brief moment before fading again. The sun barely rises anymore. Winter rules everything. That night, the cold deepens. You curl up near the hearth, feeling your heartbeat slow. Sleep doesn't come easily, but when it does, it feels like falling into snow, soft, deep, endless. You turn back toward the cabin before your footprints vanish. The smoke from your small fire curls lazily into the air. That thin gray line looks fragile, a sign of life barely strong enough to matter, but it's yours. You spend the day inside, conserving what little strength remains. You listen to the wood creak, to the faint crack of ice somewhere outside. You begin to notice how the light changes with every passing hour, pale in the morning, almost blue at noon, and golden for a brief moment before fading again. The sun barely rises anymore. Winter rules everything. That night, the cold deepens. You curl up near the hearth, feeling your heartbeat slow. Sleep doesn't come easily, but when it does, it feels like falling into snow, soft, deep, endless. The endless white. Days blur together. You stop counting them. The cabin becomes a world of its own, an eternal afternoon. You ration what little remains of the grain you found, one handful each day. It doesn't ease the hunger, but it keeps the body moving. You learn to melt snow for water, to collect frost from the beams in the morning. There's a strange calm that comes with repetition. Each day becomes a ritual. Wake, walk, gather,
burn, sleep. You stop imagining rescue. You stop imagining anything at all. One day, a storm sweeps through. The snow falls for hours, thick and relentless. You sit inside, watching it blur the window cracks with white. By nightfall, the world has vanished. Even sound disappears. The next morning, everything is brighter. The sun reflects off the new snow, blinding at first. The forest glows faintly under its touch. You walk outside and feel the weight of stillness again. The snow beneath your boots creaks softly, like the slow heartbeat of the world.
Haggling was expected in Roman markets. Prices were not fixed, and negotiation was a skill, sometimes combative. To purchase even simple items, a buyer had to argue convincingly, show knowledge of fair value, and maintain composure under pressure. Failing to do so could result in overpaying or offending the merchant. For a modern person, unaccustomed to this level of interaction, shopping was not a simple task, but a test of social awareness and endurance. The goods themselves could present difficulties. Food was often displayed without protection from dust, insects, or the crowd. Fresh produce, bread, and meat were exposed, and handling was commonplace. For a modern visitor, accustomed to packaging and sanitation standards, this could be both alarming and unappetizing. Eating or purchasing such items carried real risk of foodborne illness. Market interactions were also heavily influenced by social hierarchy. Wealthy citizens could command better service, while plebeians or visitors were treated differently. A modern person, unfamiliar with these unwritten rules, risked appearing rude or naive. Attention to detail in speech, posture, and timing was crucial to avoid social faux pas. Slaves often accompanied wealthier shoppers, carrying goods or negotiating on behalf of their masters, further emphasizing the complexity of navigating these interactions. The sensory environment added to the challenge. Smells of cooked food, fermented sauces, and animal waste mingled in ways that modern noses might find overwhelming. The heat of the day combined with the exertion of walking and bargaining could cause fatigue and lightheadedness. Noise from merchants, shoppers, animals, and street performers created a constant din, making focus and decision-making difficult. A week passes, or maybe more. You wake one morning to find tracks outside, clear, deliberate, human. They move from the trees toward the cabin, then away again. You hadn't heard anything. Your heart quickens, but you wait. The tracks are old, maybe a day or two. You follow them a short distance, careful not to lose your way. They lead toward the river, then disappear where the ice begins. No sign of whoever made them. For the rest of the day, you keep looking toward the trees, half hoping for another sign, half fearing it. By night, you light the fire again, larger this time in case someone can see the smoke. But no one comes. It's strange how loneliness changes the shape of sound. The crackle of fire becomes a voice. The shifting wood sounds like breathing. You start talking softly to yourself without meaning to. Fragments of thought, questions with no answers. When you finally sleep, your dreams are filled with snow and shadows.
The days shorten further. The sun rises late and falls quickly, leaving you with long hours of twilight. You feel the weight of the season pressing down. Even the air seems thicker, slower. The hunger never leaves now. It's constant, a dull ache that follows every movement. You think about the first settlers again, how they survived on dried meat, on animal fat, on hope. You have none of those things. You start breaking pieces from the cabin walls for firewood. It feels wrong, but the alternative is colder. Each crack of wood echoes like a heartbeat in the still air. The cabin grows thinner, but the fire lives. Outside, snow keeps falling. Sometimes it's soft and light, other times fierce and fast. The drifts rise higher against the door until only a small space remains to push through. You realize that soon, even leaving might become impossible. You spend one long evening staring into the flames. They twist and shift like living things, orange, gold, white. You begin to understand why early travelers saw spirits in the fire, voices in the smoke. When the world is this silent, even light feels alive. That night, before sleep, you whisper into the air. Not words, just sound. A way to remind the darkness that you still exist.
The edge of hunger. The snow is relentless. It piles against the cabin walls, soft and heavy. Every movement is laborious. Your fingers are stiff, your legs ache, and even breathing feels like effort. Food has become a faint memory. The small handfuls of grain are gone. The bark you chewed long ago barely counts. You stare at the frozen landscape and wonder how anyone survives here. And yet, people did. Once, long before you arrived, lives were sustained on scraps, on skill, on stubbornness. You follow the faint outlines of tracks through the snow. Sometimes they vanish entirely, swallowed by drift. Sometimes they hint at life. A rabbit, a fox, a distant bird, only to disappear before you can reach them. You realize that hunger is not simply physical, it is mental, creeping into thought and memory. It slows your mind, dulls your senses, and makes even the smallest tasks feel monumental. Ice and river. The river remains half hidden under ice. Its edges are jagged and treacherous. You move along it slowly, testing every step. A slip could be fatal. The water below is dark, alive. Fish move beneath the ice, slow and deliberate. You think of catching them. You have no tools, no trap, only hands frozen to the bone. You reach in, briefly, and pull back, shocked by the icy burn. It reminds you how alien this world is.
You follow the river upstream, noting the faint traces of life along its banks. A broken branch here, a footprint there. All of it is old, subtle, temporary. The river itself is eternal, patient, and indifferent. The cabin weakens. The small cabin begins to show its age. The walls shift slightly under the weight of snow. The roof sags more with each passing day. You fix it where you can, hammering small pieces of wood back into place. It is never enough. Fire becomes your constant companion. Each morning, each night, you coax it into life. Without it, survival is impossible. Even with it, life is precarious. Outside, the world does not forgive mistakes. A single misstep on ice, a forgotten pile of wood, or exposure to wind can cost you everything. Yet, you continue. The first storm. A storm begins quietly, snow falling at first in thin flakes. By midday, it thickens, blotting the forest into a white void. You stay inside, gathering every scrap of wood you can find. The wind presses against the walls, shifting them slightly, bending them under invisible pressure.
Hours stretch like days. The cabin shakes, and you feel every crack in the wood. Outside, visibility is gone. The tracks you followed yesterday are gone. The river is invisible beneath the snow. You sit close to the fire. Each ember is precious. Each spark feels alive. You feed it slowly, hand by hand, never letting it die completely. By nightfall, the storm shows no signs of ending. You lie awake watching snow swirl against the windows. Even here, you are not safe. The unchanging land. Days blur together. The snow is deep, the air thick, the wind persistent. Even your footsteps disappear moments after they form. You begin to understand the land is unchanging. It does not notice you. It does not forgive or punish. It simply exists. You feed it slowly, hand by hand, never letting it die completely. By nightfall, the storm shows no signs of ending. You lie awake watching snow swirl against the windows. Even here, you are not safe. The unchanging land. Days blur together. The snow is deep, the air thick, the wind persistent. Even your footsteps disappear moments after they form. You begin to understand the land is unchanging. It does not notice you. It does not forgive or punish. It simply exists. Hunger persists. Cold persists. Silence persists. You walk outside, across the unbroken white, feeling the snow resist every step. The forest is quiet, but not empty. Every tree, every branch, every frozen river carries a memory of survival. You're a small, fleeting part of it, temporary, fragile. Even as night falls, the land does not end. It continues, infinite and patient, waiting for the next winter, the next traveler, the next struggle. You return to the cabin, huddled by the fire. Your thoughts are minimal, stripped by hunger, cold, and the long silence. Sleep comes slowly, but it comes.
You pause, looking over the land. Nothing moves except your own shadow stretching across the snow. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. For a moment, you understand what it means to be alone here. Not lonely, but small, insignificant, yet present. a single body moving through a world that will continue long after you are gone. Slowly, you begin the descent. Every step is careful, deliberate. The snow shifts beneath your boots. The cold bites, but it is a familiar companion now. You walk toward the river, toward survival, toward whatever comes next. Searching for life. By midday, hunger presses sharper than the cold. Your stomach reminds you constantly of its emptiness, a dull ache that steals focus from everything else. You search for something to eat, twigs, roots, any small morsel the forest might offer. The snow resists every motion, covering and hiding what little might exist. A faint trail catches your attention, a narrow line in the snow, almost imperceptible. It might be animal, it might be human. You follow it cautiously. The path twists between trees, rises over small ridges, then disappears entirely under fresh snow. The forest offers no reward. Each step reminds you of how unprepared you are. Hunger, cold, and exhaustion weigh you down. Yet you continue. The sun moves low, its pale light fading quickly. Shadows stretch long and cold across the snow. You turn back toward the cabin before darkness overtakes you completely. Every step is deliberate, careful, measured. The cabin appears finally, half buried under snow. Its walls lean, its roof sags, but it stands, a fragile promise of shelter. You push inside, grateful for the quiet, for the temporary reprieve from the relentless white outside.
You sit close to the fire. The heat touches your fingers, your cheeks, your chest. It is small, fleeting, and precious. The day has been long, and yet survival is measured not in triumph, but in endurance. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Inside, you breathe. You survive another day. It is small, fleeting, and precious. The day has been long, and yet survival is measured not in triumph, but in endurance. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Inside, you breathe. You survive another day. Shelter in the snow. Back at the cabin, the wind presses against the walls, piling snow higher against the door. The small structure groans under the weight, but it holds. You spend the day shoveling snow, clearing the entrance and reinforcing weak spots with scraps of wood. Each movement is exhausting, but necessary. Without shelter, survival is impossible. The fire becomes your constant companion. You feed it slowly, carefully, each ember a fragile flame against the cold. It gives light, heat, and a sense of control in a world that offers neither. You sit close to it, letting the warmth seep into your bones. The snow outside continues to fall, thick and silent, erasing footprints, covering tracks, hiding the paths you've taken. The forest remains indifferent. Life continues, quiet and patient, unchanging. Night approaches. You huddle by the fire, trying to conserve every bit of heat. Sleep comes slowly, fragmented, but it comes. Outside, the snow falls and drifts, piling the world higher, untouched, unending. In the morning, the cabin will feel the weight of the storm even more, and you will rise again, to move, to endure, to survive. Another day.
The first animal. Days pass with little change. The snow covers everything. The forest seems frozen in a single, unbroken moment. Then, one morning, you notice movement. Small, cautious, almost imperceptible. A rabbit hops across the snow, stopping briefly to nibble at a buried twig. Its fur blends with the white, its movements careful and deliberate. You follow it quietly, step by step, but the snow slows you. Your legs sink, boots heavy, body weary. By the time you reach the thicket, the rabbit has vanished. No trace remains except the faint indentations in the snow. Hunger presses harder now. You realize that in this land, even life is fragile, fleeting, and just out of reach. Every meal, every step, every breath must be earned. You sit for a while, watching the forest. Even the smallest life is cautious, aware, and fleeting. You understand that survival here is not about strength or skill, but about endurance, patience, the willingness to continue even when the world seems indifferent. By evening, you return to the cabin. Your body aches, your hands are cold, your stomach empty. Yet, you feed the fire carefully, protect its fragile warmth. Outside, the snow drifts higher. Inside, you huddle close, knowing that endurance is all that stands between you and the unchanging white.
The long twilight. Evening comes, stretching the day into a long, gray twilight. The forest glows faintly under a thin layer of frost, pale and silent. You return to the cabin, boots heavy, face cold, fingers stiff from constant movement. Inside, the fire is small but steady. You gather scraps of wood, feeding it slowly, careful not to waste any ember. Each spark feels alive, fragile against the vast indifference outside. The snow continues to fall, covering the world again, erasing footprints, hiding the day's passage. You lie down near the fire, back against the cold wall, and let your mind drift. The people who once survived here did so not because it was easy, but because they had no choice. They moved, worked, endured. You do the same. Sleep comes slowly, weighted with the ache of hunger, the fatigue of the day, and the relentless cold. Outside, the snow drifts higher, a quiet, unending blanket. The land is patient, eternal, and you are a small, fleeting part of it. When morning arrives, it will be pale, thin, and cold. You will rise again. You will move again. You will endure again.
The relentless cold. Morning arrives, pale and thin. The snow has piled higher around the cabin, narrowing the doorway and brushing against the walls. You step outside, each movement deliberate, boots sinking into the soft white. The cold is sharp, a weight that presses on every joint, every muscle, every bone. Even breathing hurts, the icy air biting your lungs. The fire you nurtured yesterday is only a memory now, embers long dead under the snow that drifts through the cracks. You gather twigs, small branches, and scraps of wood, coaxing them into a fragile flame. Each spark feels alive, defiant against the frozen world. The forest outside is patient, unmoving. No birds call, no animal stirs. The silence is complete, heavy, endless. Every sound you make echoes through the empty white, a reminder of your smallness. The cold is no longer just outside, it has settled inside you. Your fingers ache, your legs feel stiff, your teeth chatter despite the fire. Survival here is not heroic, it is relentless. It is moving, feeding, breathing, and waiting, over and over, until the day ends. Evening comes slowly, and the pale light fades. You return to the cabin, crouching close to the fragile fire. Sleep comes heavily, carrying the cold with it, and you drift into it quietly, knowing the snow waits outside, patient and unchanging.
The fading light. The sun barely rises now, a pale disk hovering just above the horizon. Its light is thin, gray, and fleeting, leaving the forest in long shadows that stretch across the snow. Days blur together, each one indistinguishable from the last. Hunger presses steadily. Your stomach aches, a constant reminder that nothing comes easily here. You chew on scraps of bark, tiny portions of remaining grain, each bite a fragile lifeline. It is not satisfying, but it is enough to keep moving. The cabin feels smaller than ever. The walls groan under the weight of snow and ice. Each creak is amplified in the silence, a reminder that shelter is fragile. Without it, the cold would claim you in hours. You walk slowly through the surrounding snow, testing the land, tracing faint tracks from days before. The forest offers nothing new. Everything seems still, patient, indifferent. Even the river is hidden beneath ice, moving silently, unstoppable, eternal. Evening approaches quickly. The pale light fades into long gray twilight. You return to the cabin, crouch near the fire and feed it slowly. The warmth spreads through your hands, your face, your chest. It is temporary, fragile, yet it is enough. Sleep comes heavy tonight.
You feel the ache of hunger, the pull of exhaustion, the weight of cold pressing from outside. The forest remains unchanged, unobservant, waiting, and you endure. The river's edge. You move toward the river cautiously, boots sinking into deep snow. The ice creaks underfoot, a subtle warning of hidden fractures. Beneath the frozen surface, water flows slowly, endlessly, indifferent to the cold above. Every step is deliberate. You test the ice, pressing gently, listening for subtle shifts. A single misstep could mean disaster. The river seems alive, patient, eternal, unmoved by hunger, cold, or human presence. The forest surrounding it is quiet, snow muffling all sound. Your own breath seems loud, echoing through the empty landscape. The river stretches far into the distance, twisting and turning, silver beneath layers of ice and snow. You pause at the edge. Kneeling, you touch the frozen surface, feeling the bitter cold seep through gloves and into your bones. The water below reminds you of the relentlessness of nature, quiet, enduring, unchanging. You retreat from the river, careful not to test it further.
Even survival has limits. Even endurance has rules. The river flows on, patient and indifferent, and you follow the forest path back toward the fragile warmth of the cabin.
The long hunger. Days pass with almost no change. The snow piles higher, wind sculpts the ice, and the forest remains silent and unyielding. Hunger has become a constant companion, dull and pressing, threading through every thought and movement. You forage for bark, roots, and frozen vegetation. It is not enough to satisfy the body, but enough to keep moving. Each handful of snow-melted water, each bit of dried wood for the fire becomes vital. The mind narrows. Thoughts shrink to the simplest tasks. Keep walking, keep breathing, keep the fire alive. Memories fade into background. Dreams feel distant. The world outside is patient, indifferent, eternal. You walk slowly through the snow, noting the faint tracks of animals, rabbit, fox, always cautious, always fleeting. Even life here is fragile, elusive. You realize survival is not heroic or grand. It is simple, relentless persistence. Night falls early, blanketing the forest in gray and white. The cabin offers fragile warmth, a small victory in an unchanging, indifferent world. You huddle close to the fire, letting the embers soothe cold bones. Sleep comes slowly, carrying the ache of hunger and the weight of the endless winter.
Endurance in the white. The days and nights blur into one long, cold rhythm. Snow falls endlessly, drifts pile higher against the cabin walls, and the forest remains silent and patient. Hunger has become a constant companion, a dull ache that threads through every movement, every thought. You rise each morning in the gray light, gather wood, coax the fire into life, and walk through the unchanging snow. Each step is deliberate, each breath is precious. Even when your body screams for rest, you keep moving. The world outside does not notice, it does not forgive, it does not reward. It simply exists, indifferent and eternal. And yet, in this harsh, frozen land, there is a quiet lesson. Survival is not about strength or skill or heroics. It is about patience. It is about endurance. It is about continuing day after day, even when the snow is deep, the cold is biting, and hunger gnaws relentlessly. You lie down near the fire one last time. The warmth seeps into your bones. The snow drifts outside, covering the world in white, unbroken, eternal. You close your eyes, and for a moment the ache fades. This land is not cruel. It is simply relentless, indifferent, eternal. And you, small, fleeting, fragile, have endured. Sleep comes, deep and unbroken, carrying you through the endless white, into tomorrow, into survival, into quiet endurance.